Join me and my best friend John, where he tells us all about startup tracing to dramatically reduce the startup time of your app up to 60%. So tune in. Welcome back, everyone, to the Xamarin Show. I'm your host, James Montemagno, and today I have my good friend, and if I could say my best friend in the entire world, Jon Douglas, all the way from beautiful Utah. How's it going, John?
Hey, it's going great, James. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, it's great to have you on because you are here to talk about supercharging and reducing the app startup time in Android apps. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, so if I can give some feedback here, one of the biggest pain points that we had was, startup times on Android. You'd be developing your Forms app, maybe developing a regular Android app, and, once you hit that play button and you start to deploy your application, it takes a long time, right? It could take up to 3 seconds. So we really wanted to tackle that problem head on, and what we have for you is a special surprise today.
Yeah, because also I would think that while each of the different platforms go through different compilation steps, you could be using Forms, or you're using a bunch of different libraries, and your application grows. And additionally, like with Android, it's not like iOS, right, where you just have standard sets of devices. On Android, on newer devices like my Pixel 2 XL, like butter smooth. But if I go back to my old devices from 5 years ago that still a lot of people have, that's where some of the issues, because we're building apps for today's phones, not 2-3 years ago. Is that kind of the issue that we're running into a bit?
Absolutely. The Android ecosystem is so fragmented with different devices, different RAM, different storage, different capabilities. And so really, I mean, it depends on the phone, but at the end of the day, we wanted to tackle this head on and make sure that we can apply something that will affect all devices.
Well, beautiful. So what do you have for us? Because I would love to trim down the startup size as much as humanly possible.
Absolutely. So what we have is a feature that we're calling startup tracing. And what this is basically, if you're familiar with Mono, there's a feature within Mono that allows you to use a built-in AOT profiler. And what that does is it generates an AOT profile for your application based off of what it believes should be optimized at startup time or loaded.
Okay. Is this different from just like when I AOT an iOS or an Android application today, or is that the thing that we're talking about?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different.
Okay.
It's still using the AOT compiler. However, it's doing more subset of that respective profile. So what that means is, like typical AOT, you'd have a very large file set because what's happening is it's generating a file on the side. So then you have kind of a bloated APK, but you do reap the benefits of having a faster application at startup. However, with startup tracing, instead of having that bloated APK, we're only doing a subset. And because of that, we're only bloating the APK by maybe 1 to 5 megabytes. But at the same time, we're drastically improving the startup speed as well.
I see. That's awesome, because I know that when AOT came out, it was really great for Android because I've been AOTing my iOS applications forever. But then, yeah, you had that trade-off where it's like you're ahead of time compiling everything. So what you're saying, if I was to summarize, is it's sort of like we're taking a slice of the startup, like what's necessary to start your application, making that crazy super optimized with this little tiny AOT profile bit, because we've traced, if you will, the startup of your application. It's sort of like a startup optimizer that will help boot your application super quick.
Absolutely, that you got it right on the nail.
So what do I have to do? Do I have to change like tons of code? Like, do I got to install a bunch of different stuff? And like, how do I test it? Like, what are the processes here?
Yeah, so it's actually very simple. Underneath the hood, it uses an MS Build property. We're going to actually go over that today. But before that, I want to show you just kind of a typical file new project where I can just boot my application and see how fast that is.
All right.
So what I'll do here is I'm just going to deploy this emulator that I already have booted up. This is just a Xamarin Forms shell template. So what we're going to do is we have a Xamarin Forms shell template here with the emulator already booted, and this project's already been built for you. This does not include this new feature, so what we're going to do is deploy here, and we'll see how fast it takes to boot.
So this is just standard out of the box, but this is the file list view more than just Hello World.
Yeah, yeah. So this is just the regular shell template as it comes in with the items, and you can kind of browse to them and the likes. But you might have noticed, that took a few seconds to actually get to that main screen.
Yeah, let's see it again,
Um,
actually. You want to do it
so
again
let's
for
actually,
us?
yeah, let's do that again. So one, two, three, a little bit longer than three or so, right? So what we can do is we're going to add a MS Build property, and this is going to be a checkbox in a future version of Visual Studio. But what we'll do is we'll unload this project really quick. We'll edit this project, and under our release configuration, we're going to add a quick property.
So
So
why is it under release? Like we're in debug right now. So when we're
mhm.
using this new startup tracing, why is it important to put it here in release? I know there's like global settings, but here maybe talk about these property groups and why this one's here.
Yeah, so the reason why we want to put this in release is because this is going to be public facing, or this is going to be our app that our users are going to use.
Hmm.
We don't necessarily need to do this every time that we're debugging and the likes, just because, like we want to have the full environment and all the symbols and everything uh, for our development purposes. However, for release, we really want to make sure that we have the most optimized build available so that our users can have the most performant and speedy application.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
Yeah. So again, it doesn't matter. I did have the debug configuration, but we'll switch that to release so this gets picked up. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and deploy this. Oh,
Reload that puppy.
sorry.
So you could have edited that. So you unloaded the project to edit it. You could have also
Mhm.
opened that maybe like VS Code, right, for instance?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any text editor really just need to put that property in there. So now we're still under a release, and we're going to deploy that. And we have one more step, just because we did switch it to release mode, we're going to need to switch to an x86 ABI. So just give it a second here.
Oh yeah, so file new, the Android emulators, if people don't know, they're x86 based. So you're gonna obviously need to generate an x86 architecture there. I like that it did tell you exactly what you needed to do, which is actually quite nice.
Yeah, we actually switched that error message recently, so it's nice and helpful for y'all.
So now this is gonna go through a full recompile, right? Because you've never built it for release,
It sure
correct?
will.
Gotcha. So in
Yeah,
this
so this will.
instance, though,
Uh,
there's all of these settings, and maybe while it's building, you can kind of talk about all the different things that are going on here. And is this where the checkbox will live in the future?
Yeah, so the checkbox will live under this code generation and runtime section over here. And of course, this is going to be available to all editions of Visual Studio. So it doesn't, so, traditionally as an enterprise user, you'd have access to AOT compilation. As a community user or above, you get access to use startup tracing.
Oh, very cool.
Let's just take a look at this. Look how fast that loaded. Less than a second, it seemed. So that's kind of, startup tracing in a nutshell. Really easy to get started. Of course, we're going to make it even easier for you with putting a checkbox in a future version. But yeah, so that's kind of startup tracing.
Do you want to show us one more time? I loved like sometimes you gotta watch it again in action, right?
Absolutely. So let's close out some of these applications we have in the simulator, and we'll just boot it up one more time. And boom.
Now, did you have a side by side of it? Because it is nice to see them, but did you have that
I
video
do.
side by side?
Absolutely. So I do have a GIF here, and we're going to minimize this emulator. But you might notice exactly what we kind of did here, minus the naming. It's an older GIF, but you might notice that normal is a little bit slower, around 3 seconds, whereas startup tracing is about a second.
Yeah, and it's even when you did it from the ID, it's very noticeable, right? And this is, of course, on an emulator, which is probably going to have some reduced memory already. I think usually the emulator is like 1 gig of RAM, and of course, it's based on the power of your machine. So when you actually run this on even more beefier hardware or even lower hardware, you're going to see these drastic changes, basically, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. So this is, like you said, it's using a combination of the AOT technology. We're tracing the startup of what's in your application, and then you just check a checkbox, or in this instance, we just put it into the CS prod, right?
Yeah, so just some background there is we actually provide you two default profiles out of the gate.
Oh, okay.
One of them for regular Android projects and one of them for Xamarin Forms projects. And so what we did is basically we looked through, typical applications and found, we used the profiling tool to then generate those profiles. And so that's basically saying, hey, as this type of application, this is how you're going to start up the fastest. And so a little bit further on our roadmap, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be allowing you to create your own custom profile. What that means is that as a user and you have a complicated application, say you have a very complicated Xamarin Forms application, a lot of things going down on startup, or at least initializing, you're going to want to be able to profile that and create your own profiles. Therefore, you would be able to optimize your app to reap all the benefits that we see here today.
Very cool. That's awesome. So today, if I have a Xamarin Forms app or a Xamarin.Android app without forms, doesn't matter. I can take advantage of it in the future.
Yes.
I can do crazy other optimizations on top of that. But John, that is
Absolutely
spectacular.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's pretty cool stuff.
I love when you can come on and demo something and it's one line of code or one checkbox in the future. You know what I mean? Like, check out this thing. But it's cool to get that background of how it actually is working.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have a blog coming out too, so check that out.
Well, awesome. Well, I'll put links to the blog, to the release notes, because you can get this today, and of course to the documentation so you can learn about all the packaging stuff that you need in your app. John, thank you so much for showing this off, and thank you for being an awesome PM on the Xamarin.Android team and help in getting these features out there and talking about them.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, James.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're watching on Channel 9 or YouTube, and ding that bell to get notified so you get the latest Xamarin Show right in your inbox. So until next time, I'm James Montemagno. This is the Xamarin Show, and thanks for watching. Hey, James here. Just wanted to check in and thank you for watching this video. Now do all the things that you want to do, such as like, subscribe, and ding that notification bell to become part of the notification squad. While you're here, check out all these awesome videos that I've already recorded. Click on that thing. Click it. Watch it. Do it.